Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome or welcome back, as the case might be, to this episode of TechTonic Conversations. My name is Dalibor Petrovic. I'm your host. Today, we have a really cool, interesting conversation. I am thrilled to welcome my friend and colleague Matt Thomas to this episode. Greetings, Matt.
Yeah. Hi, Dalibor, and hi, everyone.
Lovely to see you. Thank you for your time. So, today we are going to talk about a topic that is really, really important, very, very timely. Matt Thomas is a co founder of Generation AI. It's a platform that allows people to go through a full process from ideation to the development of a web app in 5 days. And it's intended for our teenagers and kids to teach them how to actually come from concept to realization using AI enablement. How timely, how important for the times that we are in. Now, of course, we're going to let Matt tell us the full story. Just before we go into that, Matt, just very quickly, that your illustrious background includes being a partner at Deloitte, and prior to that, of course, a consultant with McKinsey. I am really keen to hear what you've been working on, Matt. So maybe I'll invite you to start by maybe sharing your story, telling us a little bit about sort of how you navigated your career and life to now be co-founding and driving Generation AI.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again for having me today, Dalibor. Dalibor and I met when I was spending some time at Deloitte over the last 4 years. I recently left in May,
Yeah.
and as Dalibor pointed out, I founded an organization called Generation AI. And there's a bit of a long story of how you get here. Just for context, I've been working for a little over 20 years. So, if I just really rewind, my parents always encouraged us to think about technology. And I remember it was, I think it was mid to late 90s, the personal computer was starting to become more and more quote unquote affordable. I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily call it really affordable, but for $4,000 to $5,000, back then you could buy a Pentium 75. Windows 95 had come out, and so there was and a lot of internet clients had started to come out as well. And so my parents bought me those types of PCs when I was much younger. And so back then I was maybe, gosh, like 10 to 12 years old, something like that. And I was fascinated by it. I would take these things apart. I started to think about, oh, well, I can swap out my graphics card, or
Yeah.
I can upgrade my RAM. So it was just that type of stuff. And when it was time for me to apply for university, this is now in, I think, around 2002.
Yeah.
um, the tech crash had happened, in fact, right? A famous company, Nortel, had collapsed. It was basically starting to crater.
Yeah.
And almost stupidly at the time, I thought, oh gosh, there's no future in computer engineering. And so I thought, oh gosh, all this time I thought I would go into computer engineering, and we didn't have a lot of software engineers in the family. So
Yeah.
I don't know if maybe someone could have given me better kind of advice, foresight on that. But I thought, oh gosh, maybe I should not go into computer engineering. And so I went into business instead.
Okay.
And I had studied, a mix of marketing and finance, but, connected to the tech crash. And I mentioned Nortel. Our family, we had invested all of our life savings into Nortel networks,
Wow.
actually. Single stock, 100% of your life savings. We broke every rule of financial diversification and investing principles.
Yeah.
Um, and, old story, we lost everything over the course of a couple of years. And so, the impact to us as a family, and I was younger at the time, I didn't really understand what the stock market was, and I didn't understand what Nortel did,
Yeah.
but I thought, gosh, something so esoteric and out there had such a profound impact, negative impact on my family. Of course, you can imagine things got stressful at home. And so I had my own personal mission almost to help reform the financial sector. That was kind of like as a late teen, something I had thought through. So
Yeah.
I thought, okay, well, let me go learn how the financial sector works. And that took me through, the first half of my career, not in technology, but in the financial system. I thought, where would I learn the most about the financial system? And I was graduating around 2007, 2008 at that point. So my first job was with Morgan Stanley. I was in the investment banking division. And I was there
That's
not
a good
because I,
that's a good place to start if you want to learn about finance,
it
right?
was, it
That's a
was.
great place
And
to start. Yeah.
on top of just being inside one of those firms and on the investment banking desk, my clients were insurance companies and banks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and it was also such an interesting time, 2007, 2008, just the beginning of the great financial crisis
Yeah.
where subprime mortgage lending had, almost brought the entire financial system to its knees.
Yeah.
And so I was at Morgan Stanley when it was going to be the next bank to collapse. Merrill Lynch had just collapsed the week earlier, Lehman many months earlier. Morgan and Goldman were the next banks to go down on Monday morning, if not for the Fed and the Treasury in the US stepping in with the $700 billion so-called TARP, Troubled Asset Relief Program bailout.
Yeah.
Morgan Stanley stock, I think, went from $60 to $6, and then it rebounded on Monday morning. And so I had played a role in actually helping shore up financial firms by raising capital from sovereign wealth funds. That they were some of the biggest lenders and investors into Citibank and many banks around the world. And so I had learned a lot there. But I also thought that, gosh, you know, there's no one sector or one bank per se that can reform the financial system. At the time, the US government and governments around the world were rushing to save the system from falling off the cliff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were like through these, $100 billion bailout programs or liquidity programs by, injecting liquidity into the market so people
Yeah.
could actually buy and sell assets. Uh, Also, they were rewriting the regulatory framework that would govern how all financial firms and investors operate for decades.
Yeah.
And I thought, gosh, if there's any time to work in government to understand the financial system, it's now.
Mm.
And so, through some luck and through some, just applying to jobs, I found my way to the Canadian Department of Finance. And
Mm.
there I was working on financial sector reform, but from a regulatory perspective. So my particular file was hedge funds, but I was part of the group that, really thought through the Canadian perspective and our contribution to the global perspective on how the G20 and their working group should implement financial sector reform. So, this is very far from technology. And something that struck me over the years was big issues require a multidisciplinary approach. And
Correct.
so,
Exactly.
this is something that I think is a principle I've always taken. I thought about an issue like financial system stability. If you put that at the center of a dinner table, and who are the 6 or 8 people sitting around this dinner table talking about financial system stability? And I thought, okay, well, you probably have an institutional investor
Yeah.
like a CPPIB or something like that. You probably have the head of a sales and trading desk, at an investment bank. You probably also have a central banker, a minister of finance, a consumer
Correct.
financial advocate.
Yeah.
And I thought, gosh, I would love to sit in each one of those seats, do a little masters of finance or a masters of policy in every one of these topics.
Yeah.
So that multidisciplinary perspective eventually brought me to tech as well, because I had started to build, I was never, again, I hadn't done any software engineering as a discipline, but I had started to build a leadership theory around what we call being a tri-sector athlete,
Mhm.
someone who's able and experienced in the business, government, and social sectors. A triathlete runs, swims,
Yeah.
and bikes. A tri-sector athlete works across business, government, and social
I love
sectors.
I'm stealing that. I love the concept.
Yeah, we need more
Very good.
tri-sector athletes. We need people who understand the best of both,
Yeah.
all three worlds, and with context, know how to apply the skills that are uniquely developed in one sector and not the other. And I built a little, like I really thought about how can we encourage more people to be tri-sector athletes. And I built this. It's so simple. It was just like a Google form, right? It was I had done a lot of research, so I put together like a 45 question survey.
Okay.
Based
Yeah.
on how you answer these questions, I would be able to give you kind of like a personal assessment.
Uh-huh.
It's like MBTI or StrengthsFinder or many of these
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
quizzes, you can take online. So I just built a 45 question survey based on what, my research in the field and sent it around. And it just so happened a venture capitalist kind of found it and had read and kind of seen some of my work on tri-sector athletes. And he reached out and he said, Matt, I loved your article. Then I had created a leadership education program and, he was a participant. So he said, I love your program. And now you're telling me you have a tool that can scale. I want to be your lead investor. And I thought, lead investor, like lead invest. Like I wasn't thinking about
Yeah.
starting a
Yeah.
tech startup. I just wanted to kind of, share this idea with more people.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of my tech journey. It was a venture capitalist out of Texas who really believed in this idea. And so that was my first rodeo in the tech startup world. That all eventually led to a very small, like when I say very small, like we just paid investors back a small exit to LinkedIn. So now
Mhm.
LinkedIn actually has incorporated our technology.
Oh, so you sold to LinkedIn. That's pretty.
Yes, yeah. The name of that company was called Paddle HR, and LinkedIn did it was like an acqui-hire and paying back investors. So none of us got rich, unfortunately, but it was our first try at the whole thing. And luckily, it is nice to see your product live on,
Of course.
just in the LinkedIn ecosystem
Of course.
for sure. And I had returned to McKinsey after that as tech leader, and then eventually Deloitte. Um, and it was at Deloitte when I first started interacting with generative AI, right? Because it was in late 2022 when ChatGPT, the really kind of blew up.
Yeah.
It went viral so quickly. And it was around that time I had just become a father as well. So, I just had my wife and I had just kind of had our first son. And I had been wanting to talk to something or someone about what it means to be a father. And for various reasons, I could only talk about that so much with my dad. I could only talk about that so much with my friends who had become fathers. And so I just turned to ChatGPT and I started asking ChatGPT. This is the first version. It would have been 3.5, like GPT
3 or 3.5.
3.5,
Yeah.
I think at the time. And I just said, hey, I just became a father. I'm about to go on parental leave. I was going to take 4 months just to spend time at home and with the family. And, help me think about being a father. And I said, but before you give me any advice, please ask me as many questions as you need to in order to get to know me better. And then, give me some advice.
Yeah.
And, that's a little, and what followed was the most beautiful conversation, honestly, I've ever had. I was absolutely shocked at how deep the quality of the advice and the context it was giving. And some of us may have heard of this term called prompt engineering, where you learn how to prompt,
Yeah.
what's the right instruction to give to the generative AI model in order to get a good answer back. Related to that is something called context engineering, which is how do you give it just the right amount of information and context about you or your situation, along with the prompt, the
Yeah.
instruction, in
Yeah.
order to get
Yeah.
a really good answer back.
Yeah.
And so, by asking it to ask me a ton of questions to get to know me, that was context engineering. And then the prompt engineering was, help me figure out how to make the most of my 4 months out, my parental leave out. And yeah, over the parental leave, I chatted with ChatGPT about certainly parenthood, but like I started just talking to it about everything. Could have been about technology, could have been about geopolitics, could have been about hobbies. Like I like to enjoy cycling, and I was trying to figure out how to improve my VO2 max and improve my endurance. And over time, it struck me that this thing is a knowledge worker. And I think that was a really important insight I had at the time. It seemed to be able to tackle tasks across a variety of knowledge work. And if you not just give it the right prompt, but you give it the right context and its limitations, and even today they still have limitations,
Yeah.
you're able to produce remarkably impressive results, is what my experience was. And so when I
Exactly.
returned to Deloitte after parental leave, I had just thought, oh my goodness, Deloitte is a collection of 450,000 knowledge workers
Yeah.
across the
Exactly.
world. Company leadership must, like, their hair must be on fire. They must be thinking this is going to disrupt our industry so much. And I returned and, like, honestly, not much was happening. And I thought, gosh, like the company was starting to invest in some things, but it wasn't like as hair on fire as I perceived it to be. And so that kind of kickstarted me moving into generative AI
Mm.
and really thinking about how to harness this technology to be able
Yeah.
to augment knowledge work. And just a few steps later, I decided to co-found Generation AI. But that's kind of
That's sort of
a little bit
that's
of
the
the winding
storyline. That's the
story
build
that got
out.
me there.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, yes. And so now we are here where we are now. We are in July 2025. So fast forward 3 years from, as I calculate your return
Yeah.
from paternity leave, things have progressed really fast. And right. So
Yes.
now we all find ourselves in this very peculiar, interesting moment in history. And when I heard about what you're doing, I'm like, oh my God, Matt, I think you have a solution. And not, of course, I know your primary interest is to help kids and teenagers learn those skills. But boy, is this applicable to everybody. Tell us what it is.
Yeah. So, you know, one of the so those early conversations I had with ChatGPT were all, you could call it text to text,
Yeah.
English to English.
Yeah.
I would ask a question in English, it would return an answer in English, and across all those topics. And at some point, I heard and learned that, oh, well, ChatGPT can also help you write code. And I
Mhm.
thought, oh my goodness, how interesting would that be, right? Because at Deloitte, we do a lot of work, this whole idea of knowledge work. One artifact, I come from the software development field, is writing user stories. It's something that, people on our team spend weeks and weeks and months doing. Could we get ChatGPT, or, the underlying model underneath it, could we get it to write user stories? And so I thought, well, gosh, how would I get a model like this to write user stories? And I thought, okay, well, I wonder if I can get ChatGPT to write the initial lines of code as well. And so this, moves from English to English to code, English to JavaScript. And, English is now a programming language,
Yeah.
and ChatGPT and these LLMs, they're English to code translators, which is shocking when you first see it.
Yeah.
And so when I started to develop this skill of writing code, I started to learn how to read it as well, and I started to implement it. And it unlocked an entire superpower, within me, because no longer did I need a team of three engineers to build something. I could build, like, to start, just a prototype, a simple prototype myself.
Yeah.
And over the time, I started to dig deep, and I love digging deep into things, because if you don't, you'll hit a wall on what your software can actually do. But I went deep, and I started to build software, and I started to ship that software to the web. And I thought, oh my goodness, what would have cost $400,000 and a team of five people working for 3 months or something like that, you can now accomplish, a single person can accomplish in maybe a few weeks, if you're just a super beginner. And then over the time, I started to get better and better and faster and faster. And I started to learn some of the new tools of the
Yeah.
trade that have come out. So no longer do I just use ChatGPT to write code. There's another technology called Claude Code, and there's a few others that autonomously not just write code, but also can write code to multiple files, can connect the files together. And they call these things agents or coding agents. And so they can more autonomously build your software and do multiple steps at the same time. There's other tools out there that help you design. I'm not a designer. It's probably like the least mature skill I have. So, do what you do best and outsource for the rest. And I found a design tool online where if I can give it the right prompt, it can produce a design that
Mhm.
almost is exactly what I had in my head. I'm frankly even better. So I learned how to stitch these things together and, create what, folks would probably call decent looking and decent functioning software. And I thought, gosh, I've always wanted to, like, I enjoy sharing things. So I thought, how can I teach people to do this?
This is
And
fantastic, right? How timely for the moment. As I said, this is amazing. Please carry on, carry on. Yes.
yeah, so as I was leaving Deloitte, just a colleague of mine actually said, Matt, I would pay you to teach my kids. Like, my kids are in high school. I would pay you to teach my kids to, like, everything I just described. And I just, like, my ears perked up, because when I was leaving Deloitte, I did not have a job in hand. I just knew I wanted to return to entrepreneurship and work on generative AI technologies. And I had some ideas of what I might do, but nothing was concrete just yet. And I heard him say, I'll just pay you to teach my kids. And I was like, oh, why? And he said, I know this is going to change the entire way my kids are going to work. And, I myself just don't know quite, like, how to point them in the right direction.
Yeah.
And everything I hear is people use ChatGPT to, like, cheat on homework, or, get to it, take a shortcut to something you're supposed to do. They're not learning it to learn, using it to learn, and they're not using it to create something that didn't exist before.
Yeah.
And so that was the inspiration behind Generation AI. Could we teach young people, teenagers, to design and build and ship a web app? And I thought, like, why don't we set a challenge for ourselves? Let's see if we can get it done in 5 days.
5 days.
And that really forces you to make the tools easy to use. And the truth is, none of these tools are that easy to use. A 13-year-old can't just pick up Claude Code, or one of these autonomous, they look at a integrated development environment with code, and they're just like, what am I looking at?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
scary,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we, my colleague and I, we developed a curriculum which pretty much brings a layer of a user experience layer that makes it easy to interact with these tools. And so generation AI essentially brings the most advanced generative AI technologies into the hands of teenagers and frankly anyone who wants to kind of build and start, some sort of a software product.
Yeah.
Um, they could be you could build software just for you. It's so cheap now to build software. It doesn't cost $100,000 anymore. It probably costs about $50 and your time, and you can have a fully functional prototype for $50. It's incredible.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, you could just build software for yourself, and the era of personalized software is here. But you take it to a business level, and you can build software that can compete against big SaaS giants, and you could do
Yeah.
it at 20% of the cost,
This is
20% of
the
the
this is
headcount.
the bleeding edge. What you're doing is truly the bleeding edge of democratization of software development. Like this is democratization of software development on steroids and rocket fuel, right? And so the basic premise behind your company is that you have developed a model and a framework and a platform that will allow anyone, but starting with young people, teenagers, to come up with an idea on Monday and end up with a published software on the web on Friday. That
Yes,
works. That works.
yes.
And doing it in 5 days, and then you're now running those courses and teaching people in cohorts of how to actually. This is amazing. So can we take a deeper peek into this? I know you've prepared a bit of a demo. So for the audience members, by the way, if audience members have any questions, please use a Q&A function of the Zoom platform to submit questions so we can see them. But Matt, I would invite you to share with us what does the program actually look like? What do these
Yeah.
5 days look like?
Yeah. It's ambitious and it's fun. And when we first launched this, I'm gonna just share my screen right now.
Yep, we can see it.
So the name of the company is, Generation AI. Our website is withgenerationai.com.
Yep.
And we help people build and launch their own apps in 5 days. It's a week-long course where with through some fantastic but technically complex models. Anyone can build and ship an app and get it done in 5 days. And we first started with students after we ran our first couple cohorts. The parents said, "My child," like one parent just said, "I have a 16-year-old son. He built a early dementia signals app. His grandmother had actually passed from dementia a couple of years earlier, and his grandfather was now starting to go through some signs of neurological decline." And
Hmm.
so he came into as a 16-year-old, he came into our course and thought, "I want to build an app that maybe can detect dementia a little bit early and help signal that to the family."
Wow.
He built that up, and in 5 days, he's using it. And his father, we had a feedback call with the father after, and it was so touching and personal to him because it was, his parents.
Yeah.
And he said, "Matt, I want to quit my job and I want to join my son and I want us to build this company together. Like it's so important and he's solving a real problem. We had no solutions to, detect or manage dementia from afar and all that type of thing."
Fantastic.
And then he said, "I think a lot of adults will want to do this as well." There's a lot of people who are like, "Is this it? Is this my career?" And you just know you have this instinct inside you that there's more, but you don't know where to get started. And so we opened up adult classes as well. And I just want to share with you what you do over the 5 days.
Yeah.
This is the simplified version. I'm just going to kind of click into the view full curriculum just to give you just a little bit of a deeper sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. Okay.
so over the course of 5 days, if someone comes in with an idea, that's okay. But we don't ask anyone to come in with an idea. On day one, we help people pick the idea they want to work on. So they define their problem, then they define their MVP feature list, right? You can't build a full, something too much in 5 days. You got to define 3, maybe 4 features of what your application does. And what the user flow will be. So, you can have a list of features, but also what is the user experience? What do they do first, second, third across all of the screens?
Hmm.
And that's what day one is about. You ideate on your product and you define your MVP and user flows. Then
So Matt,
oh,
just before you
yeah,
go to day two, so and on the right side, I see on the column tools and tech. So what you are effectively saying is that these are the three particular software products that you are using to help deliver the mandate of day one. So you'll be using Miro boards, Discord, and mentors. So,
Yes.
so just a question: is mentors a tool or is mentors you?
Mentors are, that's a great question. And in fact, mentors at every stage. Mentors are the AI assistants that we have created to help us deliver the curriculum. So
Fantastic.
every day, Monday to Friday, my colleague and I, we spend 2.5 hours in live instruction. So Monday, maybe 10 a.m. to 12:30. We also have afternoon classes from 1 to 3:30. We do 2.5 hours of live instruction. But then to help the students and participants get through to the end of the curriculum or the milestones of that day, we've created AI mentors. These AI mentors are very specialized into doing certain product management jobs, design and user interaction jobs, engineering jobs, or marketing jobs. And it's a chat experience where you, as the participant, interact with the mentor. Again, they're designed to get you to some sort of a milestone, either defining your idea, creating an MVP feature list, creating your user journey, and they interact with you to help you get there at the end. In 5 days, no one's going to learn how to create an architecture document. Like that's not
Yeah,
just possible. In
sure.
addition to everything you're doing in 5 days, but the mentors can ask you good questions and help you think about technical concepts and trade-offs while without giving you too much jargon that you don't even understand what it's saying. And that's what these mentors do. And I'll have a chance to, I'd love to show you how some of these mentors work
We'll take a look.
as
We'll take a
well.
look. Excellent. And by the way, so you mentioned 2.5 hours of live instruction on day one. For those who sign up to go through this program over the 5 days, can you just explain what is the actual time commitment of those who are going through the program?
It is, you could call it full time. The live instruction part is where my colleague and I, we deliver the 2.5 hours together. So it's, 20 to 30 minutes of content, but then we help you get started with a certain mentor. And then we come back together as a group to review where you are, help you, help answer your questions and make sure you're ready. But then there's probably another 2 to 4 hours of personal work at the end of the live instruction, so that you can complete the day's milestones and be ready to start the next day. So, for
Awesome.
example, on day one, in that 2.5 hours, you definitely pick your problem and define your MVP feature list. You may only get started coming up with the user journey, but then that becomes what you do on your personal time that day.
And
And
mentor is there to help you ask questions, prompt you, guide you, so that by the end of day one, you should have those features well articulated, well defined, with help of your mentor, kind of.
that's absolutely right. Yeah, and I might just jump ahead just for the sake of it. So, once you are a student, a participant in the program, I've just jumped to another screen, which is once you log in, this is what you see as an actual participant. And you have several mentors. So these mentors are the proprietary AI teachers that we built. And on day one, you chat with Casey Dreams.
Mm.
Casey Dreams really helps extract the idea out of your head and picks a problem that you really face that you want to solve. Max Vision helps you define the MVP feature list.
Yeah.
Then you move on to design, and Myra Scope helps you come up with the user journey. So as an example, at the end of day one, you have a user journey, and I'll just show you I'll show you an example of what that looks like. I'm just going to jump ahead to a different
Yeah,
screen.
sure. Yes. Yes.
So, this is one example of an app that someone had on our platform had built. It's called Trip Split, and essentially, it's a app that helps you split bills when you're on group trips with friends. So, six of you, maybe a
Yeah.
family, maybe with your friends, you're on a trip to Vancouver or Barcelona, and everyone pays for something, but the intention is, hey, we just split it all evenly. But do you use Google Sheets on your mobile phone to track these things? Like that's a nightmare experience. And there are other apps that do this, but they started to charge you like 5 transactions a day limit. They start to charge you like some recurring SaaS fee. And it's like,
Yeah.
this is such a simple tool. Like someone said, I just going to build this for myself and it's going to be free and I'm just going to share it with my friends. So, he has a couple features that he wanted to add, adding
Yep.
expenses, deciding whether it's an equal or unequal, split, being able
Yep.
to upload a receipt. And at the end of when you talk with Casey and you talk with Max Vision, you get to this. You define your problem statement, your target users, and your key
Right.
features. When you talk with Myra, Myra says, hey, can you share everything you've done with Casey and Max? And then Myra will help you come up with the user flows, so the actual
Oh,
user
the
journey that
stories.
everyone takes.
Yeah.
And so each of these mentors, they ask you all the questions they need. And when they say, hey, I think I have enough, let me now produce this output for you. And then you can review it, validate it, or say, hey, it's ready to go to the next mentor, essentially.
Yeah, yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah, if and that's how we were able to get this done in 5 days. So you learn about user journeys, you learn about the importance of MVP. And as you talk with Max, you'll notice if you try to add too many features, Max pushes back and says, listen, you're trying to do too much. So we've trained and, forced each of these mentors to, really implement their craft the right way. And so you learn to think from a lean perspective. You learn to think about a user experience and a journey, and they kind of give their expertise, help you make decisions along the
This
way.
is fantastic. Fantastic. So so we are now we just saw day one
Yes.
how you would go about doing it. Now, just for my curiosity, Miro, Discord, what do you use Miro and Discord in day one for example?
Yes. Okay. So, Miro is for those who haven't seen it before, Miro is it's like a online whiteboard. It's a
Yeah.
collaboration tool where multiple people can log in and see, the same thing. And as instructors, we can have students follow us along. So it's essentially like our classroom board where we
Oh,
put
okay, I
our
see.
content, put our videos,
Oh,
and
okay.
also gather feedback. At the end of every
Mhm.
day, we do a 15-minute feedback session so we can learn and hear what the students like and don't like. And sometimes we're able to make adjustments for the next day.
Mhm.
Discord is where we communicate with our students. Discord and Slack, they're kind of similar in a sense.
Mhm.
Also, Microsoft Teams is just a chat messaging platform that we use. A lot of young people use Discord. They haven't heard of Slack yet, or they haven't heard of Microsoft Teams, but they're definitely on Discord.
Yep.
So we use Discord to communicate and share, share confidential information as well between students. Sometimes we're sharing a key or a secret, to access a certain service. So we want those things to be private.
That's fair.
Um,
Yeah.
and then the mentors are the Casey Dreams and whatnot that you see on our
Yeah,
platform.
the AI helpers, the AI
Yeah.
men. Yeah.
And as you go through the program, these are as you kind of you can feel free to just jump ahead. You'll probably notice a few tools that are like, oh, that's an industry standard tool or an industry standard tech stack. And so in our first class, we had 13-year-olds, who learned all of these tools and ship web apps. And it's like, and that's why the parent said, I want to quit my job. And he's an engineer by training, did an MBA, and he said, my 16-year-old son now can actually build and ship a web app better than I can.
Yeah.
Like I still haven't gone end to end to build and ship a web app, as an employee working in, technology, but my son has. And so he was just inspired by his son's learning journey. Yeah.
And of course, they're learning the methodology. They're learning the process. They're learning. Like if, I'm looking at these 5 days. So each one, of course, builds on yesterday. And the side benefit is not only to get a product, but you've actually been exposed to how this is actually done. How would
Learning
a,
these things is
right?
is so important. There's what AI what all technology does is it essentially is able to do a part of what humans used to do and maybe do it faster, maybe do it to a more degree of consistency and quality. And generative AI is not all that different from that. There's a lot of talk about generative AI replacing jobs, and I don't really see it doing that in the full, like, scary extent of what that sounds like. It will be able to do more, but it's really about augmentation. And a human in control is still, I think, a very valuable, in fact, will be the most valuable skill anyone can learn. And that's where it comes to multidisciplinary action before, too, because you might do one thing in your career. You may be the business person, you may be the engineer, you may be the designer. You work with other people across crafts, but you never really do their jobs as well.
Mhm.
But as an orchestrator of AIs, it's important for you to understand how to direct different AIs to do their jobs effectively,
Yeah,
and you become more self-reliant in the whole process.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So let's maybe, if you don't mind, let's walk us through the rest of the days,
Yeah.
and then
Uh,
we can take a look at what it actually looks like at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to kind of almost illustrate some of
Yeah.
this live for everyone. So once you end day one with a user brief, then you start day two, and you want to turn that user journey into actual screens. So at the end of day two, you have a full mock-up of your web application. Um, and so here we use a tool, and there are many tools out there. We've tried many. We land on the ones that we think seem to work the best for with the time that we have. And UX Pilot is a fantastic tool. So this is not our tool. This is a tool that a gentleman named Adam Fard created. And he is a former designer, decade plus of experience. And then he started to use generative AI to create wireframes. His craft, he, leveraged generative AI to support. And
Hmm.
so he created a company called UX Pilot. And so as an example, why don't I just show you how this part of the app works?
Yes, of course.
So let me just jump ahead a little bit. So, once you finish talking with Myroscope, you end up talking to Nia Frame. And Nia Frame will turn your user journey into wireframe specifications. And in the process, you learn about different user experience and user interaction models. Some simple stuff is, hey, you had a button for create expense. Do you want that button at the top? Do you want that button at the bottom? Do you want it to kind of float with you as you navigate the app?
Hmm.
Another example of a user experience is, if you're creating an expense for your group trip with friends, you naturally might need to, in fact, let's look at this. You need to tab add expense. You need to enter an amount. You may want to enter a description, dinner at Joe's. You want to select who paid. Are all of those going to be individual screens and you tap next and move on to a next screen? So it's kind of like one question, one input at a time. Or do you want it to be like a single vertical form where everything is just there? And,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that's a UX and UI decision as well.
yeah.
Um, the navigation. Do you want a bottom navigation? Do you want a top navigation? Do you even need a navigation at all?
Yeah.
Our mentors don't decide these things for you. They ask you these questions and they really make you think about how you want your user to experience and feel when they're using their app. And so
Yeah.
that's how you start to learn, oh, this is what a designer does. These are what design decisions look like. And after speaking with Naya Frame, you end up with something that looks like this. And I'm just going to jump ahead to, let's just pick on the ad expense screen since
Hmm.
we're picking on this. It took the user journey and said, okay, there's a screen where you add an expense and it needs some fields and inputs. So you need, of course, an amount. It has to be numeric.
Yep.
You need a title that's going to be a text or a string. You need to say who paid. There needs to be a split type. Is it an equal split or a custom split? It should be a
Yep.
toggle, et cetera, et cetera. There's a couple buttons. There's a couple behaviors. Once you're okay with this, you agree with, ultimately the outcome. You just copy this and you move on to the tool called UX Pilot. So this is uxpilot.ai. If you just look at the URL, anyone can sign up. You get like a free account. To do what you need in our course, you have to upgrade to like the $20 account, and then you can cancel it after 1 month. So there's like a small charge to use this tool.
Hmm.
And then here you can say, okay, well, I want to design a wireframe or a hi-fi. In our course, we encourage people to design wireframes. We're
Hmm.
building an MVP. We don't want to get too attached to a fancy design. It's more
Yep.
important to like almost feel like it's rough. And in this case, we want it to be a mobile app, but you can design desktop or mobile apps. And here, I'm just going to copy and paste, what I just showed there in the context field and hit generate.
Hmm.
So this will take 20, 30 seconds. Our AIs have, when we've designed our AIs, if you think about anyone here, or if you think about your kids who might take this course, they wouldn't know what to write here, right? I think that's like the important thing.
Of
We've
course.
learned what is the right prompt and the exact right level of detail that this tool needs in order to produce a good looking screen that kind of
Yeah.
meets their objectives. And this is the prompt engineering side of things. Students wouldn't know exactly how to write this for like the 20 screens that they want. And so we do that work for them, but help them learn design decisions along the way. And yeah, in about 20, 30 seconds, you get a screen,
There it is.
the
Yeah.
amount. Here's the title, who paid, and is it an equal split or a custom split? Let me attach maybe a photo optionally, and I can hit save expense.
Hmm.
And so, this might have taken a week if you did things the old way. And this isn't bad. In fact, it's pretty good. It kind of is 90% of what you likely imagined. And so we've noticed with their students when they go through this process. And again, you get to this by day two. You're already by the end of day two, you've got your entire, not just one screen, but all your screens for your
All
major
yeah.
major user flows of your app done.
Hmm.
And it's quite fun when you get to this stage because all of a sudden it's starting to become real. Now it's not
Hmm.
clickable yet, it's not real software yet, but it's all of a sudden starting to become real.
Yeah.
So if I take us back then day three, day four, and day five, you essentially get into engineering. And we
Yeah.
start with the front end. We take that image, but we translate that into code. Now you may have multiple screens. There's probably multiple functions and data types and maybe some data manipulation, but we kind of build it in the front end only. We're not yet connecting it to a database.
Hmm.
There are no APIs just yet. And then on day four, so at the end of day three, you finish the front end code. So you have a working prototype, but any memory is just in the browser, right? It's not saving in a database somewhere. It's just living in your client side or the front end side of your
Yeah.
software stack. And then on day four, we build the back end. So part of what we've done is, if we ask students also, oh, you have to provision a database. Oh, we need to like provision a deployment cloud account so you can deploy this to the web. We'd lose people, A, and you can't possibly teach all of that in 5 days. So part of what we've done at Generation AI is an automatic deployment DevOps cycle where as soon as we create your, registration, we automatically spin up a GitHub repo for you. It's a starter repo. It's kind of blank, but it includes a lot of the basics like a connection to a database. It includes some APIs out of the box. And it includes some environmental keys and some secrets that allow you to deploy to the web immediately as well. And so that way, as a student in this program, you're just focusing on your core app and the experience. You're not learning how to, provision a database. Although on day four, you do learn how to define your types, define your data model and schema, and update it over time. That's important stuff. But like provisioning a database, you don't need to learn that in 5 days.
Yeah.
Same thing with deploying to the web. We use Vercel as our automatic hosting service, and we, again, in a DevOps pipeline, automatically provision your Vercel hosting service and deploy your app and connect it to your GitHub repo account, all those things. So students have a live web app by Friday end of day, and they didn't have to do some of those DevOps works. But they learn and they teach, and we teach, enough that they feel comfortable enough to change and manipulate and grow those things over time.
Mhm.
And then on day five, there's a little bit more software and there's demo day. So everyone shares what they've done. We include parents in on demo day. So if it's if you're a young person, your parents aren't involved from day one to four, but on day five, you get parents can come and see what their kind of child has done and see maybe
And
four or
that's
five
very
other
cool.
examples.
That is
Yeah.
very, very cool. Yeah. So Matt, I know that you have a couple of actual products that came from these classes from young kids. Can you show us a couple of examples?
Yeah, absolutely. It is so neat. So, the examples I'm going to show you are from kids ranged 13 to 19.
Okay.
And um, they kind of focus on different problems. It's really interesting as we have so many students running through our program. We learn what are the problems these people face in their lives, and you can very quickly see the difference. As they get older, they start to think about time management, and as they're
Yeah,
younger, they think about
exactly.
other it's other things, and then even how they design their solution. It's incredible to see like a 13-year-old build and design an app because it can solve a real problem in the world, but it has the spirit and imagination of a 13-year-old, and they don't need any permission to kind of build and deploy this thing. So let me just show you one. I'll try to maybe run through a few examples. So there's a gentleman in our class. He's just going to first year university. So university itself, of course, is busy, but then he has a part-time job, so he has to manage that, and he has a social calendar. And something he noticed was he told us like, Matt, I hate Google Calendar. If you use Outlook as well, you have to click so many buttons. You have to like click the date, you have to click the start time, you have to click the end time. If you change your start time, it automatically changes your end time, and you maybe didn't want it to do that. There's so many things that are wrong, and it's actually gotten worse and worse over time. So we said, I just want a calendar that says like I can just type in what I'm doing. So work on Wednesday from 6 to 10 p.m. You just hit enter, and in natural language, it hits a GPT, like an OpenAI server, and it
Yep.
automatically understands and creates a calendar entry. So you just hit confirm, and then on Wednesday, you have your work
There it
event
is.
already
Yeah.
built there. I think everyone can agree that's faster than what we currently do with Google Calendar or Microsoft Outlook.
Yeah.
And so, he built some extra features. You can like look at it by day, you know? So that's something dinner with family on Tuesday, work from on
That,
Wednesday as we just described it. You can
yeah.
look at it by month. And he built all this in 5 days, which is pretty incredible.
That is very, very neat. Fantastic.
let me show you another example. This is a younger student. Her name is Aditya. She's based in Atlanta, Georgia. Her problem is very different. She suffers from chronic pain, and every morning she wakes up in, a moderate to severe amount of pain. And some days that means she can't go to school, or she has to miss a certain project, or she has to miss some sort of an event. And she described to us that she told us, and she was so vulnerable. She said, a lot of people just stop believing me, because it's a very rare condition. It's young people. And they're like, are you just making this up, Ditya? And she was, yeah, obviously that upsets her quite a bit as well. And her main pain point was she's just finishing grade 8 and she's going into grade 9. So she's like, I'm about to meet hundreds of new people and I'm going to have to explain this again to hundreds of new people. And a bunch of them aren't going to believe me again.
Mm.
So she's like, it causes so much stress in my life. And I just like, feel depressed at times. And so she said, I know an app's not going to solve my physical pain, but maybe an app can solve my mental kind of anguish. And so she's a big fan of Disney. And she said, I'm happy when I'm in the Disney universe. So she built an app which basically allows her to interact with Disney characters and they can tell her jokes, but then she can also, journal or do breathing exercises. So let me kind of share this with you. You can type a name or like there's a generator to like create a magical name. So this all hits the OpenAI servers as well. So this is all, built with AI, but using AI,
Yeah, yeah,
as
exactly,
well.
exactly.
So I'm an enchanted friend, joyful. Okay, let's go. The next part is you want to find and meet your Disney buddy. So you can choose a Disney buddy, and let me just hit this for a second. She's, loaded. Gosh, there might be like 50 different Disney characters, Donald Duck, Moana. But let me go back. Oh, sorry. I hit the master back. Let me actually show you something she did. She's like, oh, let me like answer a quiz and it will
Mhm.
automatically, attach me to a Disney character. So this is uniquely generated at runtime,
Yeah,
hitting OpenAI. And
yeah.
so if you could sprinkle a little magic on your day, what activity would you choose to brighten it up?
Hmm.
Let's explore a hidden treasure map to uncover secrets of the world. Okay. If you wandered into a whimsical land, what would be your first adventure? Yeah, let's climb to the top of a candy mountain. Okay. So,
Yeah, yeah.
she said, I just want to build an app for me. And
Uh-huh.
that's one of the beautiful things about generative AI. You don't have to build an app for everyone in the world. You can
Yeah.
have personal software that just like works the way your mind works the way your personality works. And this is for her, but I think this is such a fun app.
This is so cool. I can so see a scenario where all of us um, actually end up with a suite of solutions like this that
I think
we
so.
that are just made by us for us to help our lives improve. Like you can build a personal portfolio of apps on top of whatever else you're using that is commercial, right? So neat. And
And
now with the final question, she's gonna pick the character.
so
There we
I just told you a little bit about myself. I answered all those questions a little honestly, and I love Moana, by the way. So like this worked. Like I love Moana. I think she's fantastic, and the movies are fantastic. And I got matched to Moana. So okay, Moana's my buddy,
Yep.
and now there's like a set of features. She's like, okay, well, sometimes I just want to like read dad jokes. Um, or actually, which one is the dad joke? Oh yeah, distraction moments. So dad jokes, fun facts, and wacky things to brighten your day. So it's kind of loading, yeah, dad jokes. Why did the bicycle fall over? It was too tired. Okay, great. You get the idea. It could also be like fun facts that she
Yeah.
generated as well. But there's also like she created something like to create a breathing exercise.
Mm-hmm.
So breathe in, hold
Wow.
your breath, breathe out, right? And a little 3 minute breathing session, which I thought was just so cleverly designed and neat. She had so many other interesting insights, which is what's so beautiful. She said, whenever you're in a negative like loop in your head, often the advice is try to think of something positive. And she's like, you can't. You're in a negative loop. You can't think of something positive. And so she created a positivity board, which automatically, like in this app, you can also do some journaling and put in some memories from the past. So if you're in a doom loop, you hit positivity board and it looks at your history of journals and it automatically brings back a positive memory
Wow.
from your journals. So it's like you don't have to think of the positive memory. It will remind you of a positive memory. And it's all these little things. I was like, only a 13-year-old, like no adult would have created this,
So
and it's
this,
actually a
yeah.
beautiful app.
So what we're looking at is what a 13-year-old girl
Yes.
developed in 5 days.
Yes.
And you are obviously showing us it's working. This is
Oh yeah.
live.
Honestly, all of you, like if you just look at this URL, all of you can go to this URL right now. Like it's deployed to the web.
Wow.
If she uses it, etc. Yeah.
This
And there were so many different apps. Maybe I'll just show you one more. So,
yeah.
you know, oh, sorry, what was that?
No, no, I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, so this is Nashawn. He's about no, he's sorry, he finished. So he's now graduated university. He studied engineering at McMaster.
Hmm.
So he studied engineering and he took this program and he studied software engineering. And I asked him a question. I was like, "Hey, Nishan, in your 4 year, or it was like 5 years with co-op, 5 years at McMaster, did you ever build an app end to end?" And he's like, "No." He built some like back-end logic and he
Yeah,
once created
yeah,
like a prototype of something, but he never built and shipped and designed a web app end to end. So this kind of brings together a culmination of 5 years of, what he studied at school. So he, is going to start living alone and he has to learn how to cook. And he's not a natural cook. So he thought, well, gosh, I need something to help me like cook nutritious meals. And his pain point was during university, all he ate was junk food, Wendy's, every day, every second day. Like he gained a lot of weight. And so he's like, this can't continue,
yeah.
but I don't know what to do in the kitchen either. So he built an app to help him learn how to cook. So it's called Chef Kitchen. And something that we do automatically in our classes, we give people authentication out of the box. So there's a lot of things we've done to because we don't want students building authentication. It's just not the right thing to do in the first five
Yeah.
days. So I'm just going to enter my email. The default authentication method is a one-time password. So we tell students, don't store passwords. That's just begging for some sort of data leak. So we give them some security best practices as well. I just went to my email. I'm just copying in my one-time password. And you get launched into Chef's Kitchen. So this
Yeah.
is designed for the mobile experience. That's why it's so narrow. But I can add an ingredient. Let's say I have eggs. And let's say I have brown sugar. I'm just making this up. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And let's say I have chicken. So you add some of your ingredients, and there's a button, see the recipes I can make. And it immediately loads from its database recipes that include those types of ingredients. So 9 recipes were found. He hasn't added pictures yet, but you can imagine, adding
Yeah,
pictures.
that could be added. Yeah.
Mediterranean chicken and rice, and there's a full ingredient in there, ingredient list. And the steps, which
And
you can check,
steps.
right?
Awesome.
And then you can, basically save this recipe and, come back to it, et cetera, et cetera. So these are,
This
yeah,
is
I'll
very
stop
nice.
there. These are 3 examples of apps that students in our program built for themselves in yeah, just 5 days.
Yeah, this is awesome. So we have a question from the audience. Actually, 2 questions. One is there a suite of paid products that Generation AI use? Um, so how I translate this is I'm going to assume that you, as Generation AI, you are subscribed to all of these tools that you're using. Um, uh, are people who are on the course also required to subscribe to the tools themselves? I'm going to assume yes.
Oh, well, so great, great, great point. So far in our delivery model, we create accounts and buy the credits for all of these. So for UX Pilot, I mentioned if anyone wants to just use this tool independently, you can go on. There's something free. You can always obviously upgrade. But for our students, we buy bulk credits, like thousands and thousands of credits for our students.
Hmm.
So no, and for Claude Code, the coding assistant that uses tokens for creating lines of code, we have already subscribed to the Pro and Max plans and give students authenticated logins already. So coming into this program, they don't have to create their own accounts. And post program, they can either continue using our platform or they can independently subscribe and use those tools independently as well.
And Matt, just for my sanity, uh, all the tools that you're using to generate this experience, they're all essentially publicly available subscriptions to capabilities, and they all range in their monthly subscription. Like these are dozens of dollars. We're not talking about anything here that costs $1,000 a month subscription, right?
That's right. If you wanted to subscribe to UX Pilot by yourself, you could get away with the $20 a month plan. Um, to use Claude Code, you can spend up to $300 a month, but you can get away with the $20 a month plan.
Yeah,
And essentially, those are the two tools we use. Claude and UX Pilot.
yeah.
Uh, our mentors are proprietary to our platform. But once you get the hang of product design and engineering, we tell our students use our platform for as long as you need. But the whole goal is that you don't have to use our platform all the time. Maybe after 2 months or 3 months, you've got the hang of how to think about a data model. Well, then you don't need us anymore. You can just interact directly with Claude Code and ask Claude Code the right questions. Our
Yeah,
mentors are just designed to create like that learning experience so that you know what questions to ask and what matters when
this
you're
is
designing
very,
or building
yeah,
something.
very, very neat. Very, very cool. So Matt, uh, where do we go next? You want to show us a little bit about a platform and how mentors work?
Oh, well, yes. So I want to so far we've just actually gone to the end of day two. So
Yeah,
maybe a question. It's like, how do you get kids to code? Like
yeah,
this is in fact, the hardest part is what like happens next.
that's right.
And so we've learned through actually some mistakes. We initially thought let's help students download VS Code, install various technologies on their platforms, and it's a mess. It's a nightmare. It's not the right way to like spend 5 days. So we're leveraging a web-based IDE. So let me just show you how this works.
Hmm.
So we give everyone a GitHub account.
Hmm.
Let me just sign in. Oh, give me one moment.
Yeah, yeah,
Because I have to use my phone right now to authenticate. So I'm just going to
yeah.
actually
That's
phone
okay.
I'm
Yeah,
using it as.
of course. This is really, I love that what you're showing us is so actually practical. It's so like people who are watching this will know enough to go and investigate this by themselves before they register for your course. This is awesome.
There we go. I think I'm
Are you
back now.
back? Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Whoops. There we go. Oh, there we go. There we go. Got it.
Okay, perfect. So I just, had to do a two-factor authentication into
Yeah.
this. So let me just navigate. So everyone, when they log into the platform, we automatically provision a GitHub repo. So this is a test account that I've just created, and we automatically provision a GitHub repo because there's so many different ways the AI might like create your starting repo. And sometimes they follow a best practice, sometimes they make it more confusing. And especially if you're new to this, you don't want to start with the default kind of repository structure. It's that like any of these programs default to a more complicated repository structure, which is really unnecessary, for a learner, and it's not like very beginner friendly. So we've designed a repo that comes pre-built with easy to understand file structures and folders, built-in APIs so that you don't have to like build a couple APIs yourself. And then the big question is, okay, how do you start writing code? So what we do is instead of getting people to download all sorts of software, GitHub itself has something called code spaces, and it is a pretty neat web-based coding environment,
Hmm.
which is just as powerful as having it, run on your local desktop. It takes a minute or so to load. It's provisioning all these services in the web as we speak. The benefit, of course, is it's also directly connected to your GitHub repo. So, built-in ability to sync and push your code updates live to the web. It might be done. So neat. So, something we teach students a few technical commands. There's something called npm run dev. This is just one way of starting your local server. This
Oh,
allows you to kind of preview your website. So we tell every student, oh, like how do you kind of preview your website and make edits locally before you ship it to the web and, to the website that everyone else will use. So that starting repo we created, it has a basic app. It's not really an app. It's just a folder structure with a page, again, with some built-in APIs. So, but you can preview it and it's deployed and live. So, again, nothing fancy, but it is a real link. So I'm just
yeah.
going to copy this and I'm going to bring it into my environment. There we go. And then the other thing we teach students to use is something called Claude Code.
Mm-hmm.
So Claude Code is an amazing, amazing product. It's built by a company called Anthropic. So in the big generative AI, competitive space, you have OpenAI. They're the makers of ChatGPT and the underlying models like GPT-4,
Yeah.
4.1, o1, o3, etc. You have another company, and OpenAI was primarily backed by Microsoft. You have another company called Anthropic. Anthropic is primarily backed by Amazon. And Anthropic is the creator of Claude and Claude Code. You know, if you ever use ChatGPT, it's the same thing as saying like I use Claude. It's another
Yeah.
kind of UI to do a text-based chat experience. But they've really honed in on the software developer experience, and they created
Mm-hmm.
a tool called Claude Code, which it acts like like a senior developer that's in your code editor and in your terminal. So I can say things like, "Hi, Claude," and Claude Code will respond to me in this kind of area. And so what I thought I might do is let's see how quickly we can turn, where are we? Let's see if we can turn this into something that lives on the web.
Yeah.
So one thing that's nice about UX Pilot is this isn't just a picture, it is in fact code. So if I kind of go to source code,
Yeah. Oh, there it
now
is. Yeah.
this is not JavaScript, it's just HTML, CSS. So it's enough to describe what it looks like, but there's no interactivity. But what we do is I'm going to copy this and I'm going to go to one of our mentors. So now we're kind of entering the engineering mentors day and we start chatting with Alex Specs. Hi, Alex. Alex is designed to help students set up GitHub code spaces. So everything I kind of just showed you, we walk through students through how they're going to do it. So he initially asked, are you working with GitHub's code spaces? Do you need any help getting started? I was like, no, I actually have it all set up. Code spaces and Claude Code is ready to go. I have my first screen ready to build. I'm going to try to like shortcut at least 10 things he tries to get students to do.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So before we dive into building, could you please share the user journey from Myroscope? So, Alex, as a good engineer, wants to
Oh,
understand
yeah.
the full perspective. Okay, Alex, I will share the user journey. So this is the user journey file. I'm just gonna,
Perfect. Remember that. Yeah.
let me just try to copy paste everything. There we go. Thanks for sharing the design brief. To help you map your flows to actual screens, what parts of the user journey guide did you already turn into screens? I only created one screen, the add expense screen. I
Mm-hmm.
just want to build that in
Mm-hmm.
my project.
Yeah. Okay.
Perfect. Did you make any major changes to the ad expense scheme? No, I did it just as my design brief said. Alex wants to know, have you changed anything? Because that would change. Okay, now please share the HTML CSS. So we're moving along. So I'm going to go back here, copy this file, right?
Yep.
Again, it just looks like maybe 200 lines of code. Um, let's share it with Alex. It automatically understands it's a file, so I just share that file. And let's see what Alex says. Quick check. Are you able to see inside your docs design folder in your code space? No, not yet. So what Alex is doing is he's walking through a process that we've designed in order to take what you've built in UX Pilot and get
Yep.
it to work on your software project. So please move your expense form into a docs design folder in your project. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so let's just do that together. So there's a folder here called docs. I don't have a design folder, so I'm going to create a new folder. And this is exactly what students do. And then what did he ask me to do? Create an expense form ref file. Okay, so I'm
Mm-hmm.
just going to copy and paste this. I'm going to create a new file, call it this. And then he wants me to copy and paste this code. So I'm just going to do that process again as well. Oh, sorry, wrong. There we go. Okay, so yeah, actually it turned out to be 700 lines of code, just that all of that HTML that we had before.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, I've done that. So once he says, let me know once you've got it saved there, and then we'll move on to mapping your front end structure. Now let's talk about the front end structure. Think of your app like a house. Your ad expense screen is the room, and some parts, like a form field or some sort of a selection, might be the
Yeah.
furniture or what we call components.
Yeah.
Yes, thanks for that. So it's trying to teach you about pages and components. So you start to think about component structures as you build out your app. Awesome. Looking at your ad expense screen, all that HTML code, I see one page, essentially the ad expense room, but there's probably a few reusable components, like a form field, a picker, a receipt or photo action. That sounds fine. Again, users can actually, like often AI is not always right, and we teach students, hey, think about your app, don't just blindly accept what the AI is teaching you. But this is how we've like kind of created an educational experience as they
Yeah,
use
no,
our
it's
tools.
fantastic. I'm loving what I'm saying. This is so simple, intuitive, wonderful. Yes.
Great. For the data side, okay, so now it's starting to look, it looks like you have some data fields. So amount, title
Yep.
description, payer, split details, et cetera, et cetera. You also have a list of users, right? If we go back to that like
Yes,
design,
that's
there's
right.
like three
Yeah.
users here.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
kind of it picks these things out, which is so fantastic. Is this data structure clear and matching what you're expecting? That
Yeah.
matches.
Yeah.
Awesome. Ready for me to give you the front end architecture. And it's going to ask me to save it as docs frontend structure.md.
Uh-huh.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
please.
Yeah.
So Alex has walked me through a few things, asked me a few clarifying questions, taught me a few things about data fields, components, etc. And now he's creating he's creating a new file he wants me to save to my coding environment called frontend structure.md. So let me just create this file to begin with in docs. Okay. And we'll walk through this. Okay, so it's saying, hey, we need a page. There's going to be some reusable components. Here is the data structure for an expense and for a user. So starting to think about data schema.
Yep.
And then a few like extra details. So let's save this in our file.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yep.
I saved it. What now?
But
And so another big part of this is he's just saying ready to start building. Yes, is we talked a little bit before about prompt engineering and context engineering.
yeah.
For a beginner, over time, you'll get used to working directly with Claude Code. But a question is like, what do I tell Claude Code to do? What's the right prompt and instructions it should have? So we abstracted all that, and Alex will say, okay, here's the first instruction to tell Claude Code. I'm just going to copy and paste this. Create a
Right.
new page so we have a dedicated screen. Build the UI exactly, and then leave the root page for now. So it's just asking me to do a few things, a
Yeah.
couple instructions for Claude Code. For anyone who hasn't seen a Claude or any of these autonomous agents, you're about to see something really cool happen. So I just copied and pasted this,
Yep.
and let's hit enter. So Claude, there's multiple ways to use Claude Code. Like it's almost like a slider from like, do you want me to check with every small thing with you, and you have to like personally say yes and
Yep.
enter,
Yep.
or do you
Yep.
want me just to be like fully autonomous and just
Mhm.
like I'll just do everything I think is necessary, and I'll just tell you at the end when it's done. Yeah, so it just I've turned on the autonomous mode just to save time.
Yeah. Yeah.
We encourage students to like check in, but eventually, you come to trust these tools because they're pretty good, especially when you've broken it down like the way we have. Like, remember, we've given it that initial HTML CSS file.
Yep.
We've created a front end structure.md,
Yep.
and we've given it like 3 bullet points. So this is like when you give it that clear instruction and context, it like, I don't want to promise, but it probably will work the first time.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So it created its own to-do list. It's now deciding to run through the to-do list. Um, oh, and it looks like it's done. So the page is protected with authentication and matches the design exactly as specified in the file. This
Mm-hmm.
page includes the amount, title, description, so it kind of tells you when it's done.
Yeah.
So we'll
Yeah.
just ask, oh, and it says here, okay, once that's done, add expense to your preview URL. So why don't we just try to do that?
Okay.
So we go back to Claude Code, and the preview URL is right here. We had so I didn't really talk about this, but on the left-hand side is your coding assistant, like your pair
Yeah.
programmer. On the right-hand side is like your website,
Yeah.
the preview of it.
That's right. Yeah.
So at the end, let's just add what it added me to do. This is essentially like the route to the page. I'll
Yeah.
hit enter.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. We'll see if it works. Oh, I have to authenticate myself. So
Yes.
it is,
Yeah.
in fact, it did say, hey, this is now
It
behind
did.
the authentication
Yeah.
wall. So
I saw that. That's right. That's right. So
yeah, coach, click one. That's the account I'm using. I'm just going to navigate to this Gmail account. Give me a moment.
yeah.
It would have sent me a one-time password.
Yeah. And by the way, you mentioned that's the type of authentication that you are teaching kids to, or teaching your students, that they're not passwords, they're one-time passcodes, right?
Exactly, yeah. So there's only one of the things we definitely want to teach students in the time that we have is how to think, at a high level about security. And one kind of common thing that we all learn is only store the data you absolutely need.
Mhm.
And if you don't store something, it can't be hacked. It can't be
Yeah.
stolen,
Yeah.
right? And
Exactly.
so, of course, a lot of platforms do have password storage, but there are benefits and there's pros and cons, and especially for students, we want people to like almost think of like you don't need to store a password anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just give me a moment while I find the password.
Hmm. This is fantastic. I was looking to see a demo of some product that is developed, but you have just now walked us through the whole process. This is such a wonderful thing to actually see. Of course, many people who are not developers, um, where else would they see something like this? And as you describe it, of course, there is complexity to it. That's why there is a 5-day course, but it's actually logically structured. I am not a software developer myself, but I can absolutely follow exactly what you're saying. So very neat.
Thank you for saying that. That was our primary design
Yeah,
around this, which is how can we create something that you're using the most advanced technology available,
yeah.
and yet can we somehow teach a 13-year-old? And if we can teach a 13-year-old, hopefully that means we can also teach like any
A 54-year-old.
yes, exactly.
All right.
So I'm just waiting for my authentication code to come in.
Okay.
Uh, I had to update one thing in the back end. Let me just try this again. When I was talking, of course, as you know, Dalibor said, we're going to do a live demo, and guaranteed, as anyone who's done demos before, sometimes something doesn't work as quick.
Look, that's quite all right. Like clearly what you're doing works. So
Okay, there we go. It just took,
you got
I'm not sure why it took a second time, but so I'm verified and I'm in, and okay, go to add expense. There we go.
there it is. There it is. Oh my God, look at this.
So let me, yeah, it's mobile, kind of like nice and responsive.
Incredible.
There's probably, yeah, I wonder if it, like, we haven't built a whole app, but, $120, dinner at Joe's. It's paid by John Doe.
Hmm.
Was able to select it.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I selected it, and let's say equal split or custom split. Okay, so at this stage, what it's done is it's just built the UI, but some of the interactions
Sure,
don't
of course,
just
of
yet.
course. Obviously, there's more to this, but you've just demonstrated in 20 minutes in 20 minutes, literally, you've gone from concept to a wireframe to a functional website, and you show the code that was auto-generated. Like phenomenal.
And Alex is my guide. So, it knows. I said, hey, it works. What's next? Now let's add interaction. So Alex is your guide. He's going to be like, okay, what do you want to add next? Do you want to change the amount? Do you want to select the parry? Do you want to toggle? So let's implement the toggle split type. I could go on, of course,
Yeah, yeah,
but
of
it's
course.
essentially like screen by screen, interaction by interaction, we will slowly develop this app. Uh,
Amazing.
and in
Amazing.
fact, it says right here, tell Claude Code do these two things. Um, so why don't we just try that? But now you're starting to get the flavor of how the mentors work, the tools work,
Yeah.
and the flow to getting a web app
So
works.
mentors are absolutely critical, obviously. Absolutely critical to the process.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is awesome. So Matt, once the demo day arrives, so this is the process to develop the code, and then on day 4, you are actually connecting the application to the backend, to the database, so that it can actually function properly.
Yep.
And then
Your
the last step
data,
is to,
multiple accounts, etc.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And of course, that is also done in a similar fashion. You first of all, you listen to your live instruction, that is 2.5 hours, and then you get your task for the day, and then you interact with your mentor who walks you through the processes. By the end of that day, you have a functional app, front end, back end, and you're ready for your Friday,
That's
the
right.
demo, right?
We even have a demo day mentor as well, because one of the things that we promise for all the people who go through our program is building is half, like, it feels like it's more than half the job, but we try to tell students it's only half the job. The other half is communicating. And
Yeah.
it sounds simple, it sounds basic, but almost every parent, I've heard this from many parents, it's like, I wish my child could communicate better.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So this is something we learn in consulting. Communication skills are critical to any job,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
any relationship, anything where you want to influence or share a message or get something across. And so we even have a demo day mentor that helps you prepare for demo day. It teaches you what's a good storyline. How do you come up with a storyline for your 3-minute demo pitch?
Yeah.
We even have an AI. So, what you've seen with our mentor so far is text to text, it's just like chatting. Uh, AI, of course, has voice mode as well. And so if you're going to practice a demo, you probably want to say it out loud and you want the AI to hear your voice
Exactly.
and then give you feedback on your delivery. So OpenAI has voice mode as well. So our demo day mentor, her name is Paige Turner. Paige Turner helps you come up with the script,
I love it.
listens to you practice, and gives you feedback on your
I
delivery.
love it. Amazing. Fantastic.
Yeah. And
That's,
this
yeah.
took about a minute and it looked like it added a bunch of things. I mean, if just for fun, let's just see.
Let's see where we're at. Yeah. Dinner at Joe's.
So I took John Doe and let's see if it worked. Well, it's interactive right now, but the math isn't working. So that would be the next thing we do.
There
But
we
at
go.
least it's interactive now. And yeah, I would
Yep.
have hoped that equal split worked by now. But again, that's what you do with the AI. And so, not everything goes to plan. And we don't want it to be magic. We know like half your time as a programmer is
Well,
dealing with bugs.
what is
I'll
important here, I
experience
think
that
you
too.
mentioned this earlier. What is really important here is, yeah, yes, you will get a product in 5 days. That's the catchy, interesting part. But you're actually compelling people to learn how is the process actually unfolding. What are the steps? So this is an actual, this is truly a work applied educational experience. The way I think most people will be best to learn this is through practice, just like this, guided practice, just like this. This has been fantastic, Matt. So, final question that I have for you is, how much does the registration cost? Where do people go to register? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just take you back to our main site.
Yes.
And again, it's with generationai.com. Maybe one day we'll buy generationai.com, but we're not there yet. So with generationai.com.
Mm-hmm.
And you can click check dates.
Mm-hmm.
It'll take you down to we have a few classes that are coming up. A couple start next week. So
Yeah, yeah,
July 14th, July 21st, then
yeah,
a little bit of a break, and then August 11th and August 18th. We have some classes that are for students, and then because of some demand, we have classes that request for adults. Essentially, anyone who's 20s, 30s, all the way up to we have We had a 76-year-old actually use our app in a previous cohort 2 weeks
76
ago.
year old.
76-year-old. On the same day, with the same mentor, a 12-year-old was using Myroscope and a 76-year-old was using Myroscope, and they
Beautiful.
both loved it. They're both like, "Wow, this like it worked." I was like, "That's kind of makes you proud as the creator of something."
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Um, so you can register here, and then you asked about cost quickly as well. So for now, what we're still building this and we're experimenting with pricing. So for the summer, it's essentially a pay what you want at the end of the program. So there's no
Mm.
upfront charge. You go through the program. At the end of 5 days, you basically pay what you believe it was worth to you. We've had some people pay us $600. We've had some people pay us $200. We know that people like around pay $200 to $300. So we just give you like a price anchor, but it's really up to you. If you feel like you didn't even ship your app, you don't have to pay us anything. And if you feel like I just learned a life-changing skill, again, you can pay us whatever you feel like it was worth to you at
Matt,
the
this is fantastic. What a beautiful, what a clever pricing model too. Are there limits to how many people can participate in a cohort?
Yes, so it's a fantastic question. We found that, for my colleague and I, his name is Jay Shin. He's a wonderful colleague. We've worked together for several years and just incredibly smart. Also multidisciplinary, came from a product background, now does coding and engineering design, just like everything I just described to you. So we built this together. We found that it's about 10 people that we can truly get to the finish line. Like you can imagine if I had like 40 people in a class, how will we get all 40 to
Yeah.
ship out? We found 10 is approximately correct. So each class has 10 students that finish. We also noticed that, some people drop off. Like we wanted to create a course where most people get to the end, but if everyone gets to the end, maybe it's a little too easy. So we have 80% completion rate. That's our target. We
Mhm.
target 80% completion, not
Yeah.
100%. That's
Yeah.
how we know it's just challenging enough
Yeah.
that it's worth like a good experience and you learn some hard skills.
Yeah.
So again, 10 people per class.
And the delivery obviously is virtual.
It's a virtual delivery, right?
Yeah.
So Google Calendar invites, and yeah, virtual instruction.
And now, Matt, once people finish, once they finish and the course is done and they have their app, now after the course, they want to do another app.
Yes.
Do they have access to the tools? Do they have access to the mentors or not?
Yeah.
How is that going to work?
Yeah. Every student who took our course so far, at a minimum, they said they're still shipping code. Like they're still using our mentors. They're still shipping code. So again, we've had like a different 13-year-old girl. Like this is going to sound a little crazy. It's like semi-inspiring, semi kind of scary, but we saw her shipping code at 2:34 a.m., 3:34 a.m. She finished her day at 5:30 a.m. She was just, and like I talked to her parents later. I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like we didn't ask your child to work that hard. They said, honestly, I've never seen her work that hard. Like I like, it can't be every
This
day,
is
but I
yeah.
thank you for inspiring her to like work on a volunteer project like so hard. So everyone continues to work on their app. So they get like any donation continues your access to the platform, right? Like
That's important. Yeah.
only if you donate zero will like we have like there are costs to run this thing, so we
Yes.
have to take
That's
it
of
out.
course. Of
But
course.
any contribution as per our community pricing model keeps your access to the platform and the underlying deployment and database services alive. And then we had other students who said, I have a second idea. Can I work on a second idea? And we just create like a new project for them. And so they can continue to use the
This
app.
is
And
fantastic.
they just don't need to do the instruction, the live
This is
instruction.
this is fantastic, Matt. I think that you have clearly identified a very, very real gap and created a solution that is elegant, intuitive, that works, that is up to the times. I think that this is absolutely magnificent. And thank you very much for sharing it. And thank you for going in such a level of detail. Because like this was way beyond just let me showcase smart thing that Matt is doing. We actually went through a process to demonstrate that this actually works in real time, in no time. So
Yeah.
for the audience members who are interested now, of course, who is the man behind Generation AI and where to reach them at withgenerationai.com.
That's right.
Matt, this video will be posted later on today. Thank you very much for your time and for sharing your fantastic concept and idea and business. And I look forward to staying connected with you.
Oh, thank you so much, and everyone who stuck around to the end. I appreciate your time, Dalibor, and everyone's time.
Absolutely. All the
Absolutely.
best, and I'll see you all at the next episode of TechTonic Conversations. Bye bye.